The shock of the unexpected is not loud at first. It doesn't announce itself with alarms or warnings. It arrives quietly, slipping into ordinary moments and turning them upside down before your mind can catch up. Imagine stepping into your bathroom after a long day, turning on the light, and realizing you are not alone. A stranger is standing in your shower, wet, shaking, terrified, and the only thing she says is, "Please, don't call anyone." Pause. That moment changed everything. Unexpected moments also expose how fragile our routines really are. We build our days around predictability. Wake up, work, return home, rest. These routines give us comfort and the illusion of control. When the unexpected interrupts them, it reminds us that life is not as organized as we pretend it is. Chaos does not need permission to enter. It just shows up. Another powerful aspect of shock is how isolating it feels. In that moment, you are alone with the situation. There is no time to ask for advice, no pause button to consult others. The responsibility of reaction falls entirely on you. This isolation can intensify fear, but it can also sharpen awareness. You become hyper-focused, noticing details you would normally ignore: body language, tone of voice, silence, movement. Your senses go into survival mode. The shock of the unexpected also challenges judgment. Our brains love patterns. We categorize people and situations quickly to feel safe. But sudden events don't fit neatly into categories. A stranger in an unexpected place doesn't immediately register as threat or victim. They exist in an uncomfortable in-between space. This uncertainty is unsettling because humans prefer clear answers. The lack of clarity forces you to slow down or risk making the wrong decision too fast. Importantly, shock is not just fear, it is interruption. It interrupts assumptions, habits, and even identity. In calm moments, we believe we know how we would react in a crisis. But the unexpected tests that belief. You may discover courage you didn't know you had, or hesitation you didn't expect. Neither makes you weak, both make you human. Unexpected shock also reveals how quickly power dynamics can shift. In your own space, you assume control. When something unforeseen occurs, that control feels threatened. Even if the other person is vulnerable, the imbalance feels real because the situation itself is unfamiliar. Regaining control doesn't mean domination. It means understanding what is happening and choosing a response rather than reacting blindly. Finally, the shock of the unexpected teaches an uncomfortable lesson. Safety is not guaranteed by familiarity. Just because something has never happened before doesn't mean it won't. This realization can be unsettling, but it can also be grounding. It encourages awareness, empathy, and preparedness, not for fear, but for reality. The unexpected strips away comfort and replaces it with truth. Life is unpredictable, and our true character often reveals itself not in planned moments, but in the seconds when everything goes off script. Fear is the fastest emotion the human brain produces. It appears before logic, before empathy, before understanding. When faced with an unfamiliar and sudden situation, fear takes control instantly because its job is to protect. It asks only one question: am I safe? Everything else, morality, kindness, responsibility, comes later. This is why fear often feels overwhelming and urgent, pushing people toward quick decisions that may not always be thoughtful or fair. In moments of uncertainty, fear simplifies the world. It turns complex situations into basic choices: stay or run, fight or freeze, trust or reject. Compassion, on the other hand, does the opposite. Compassion complicates things. It asks questions fear does not want to hear. Why is this person here? What happened to them? What do they need right now? These questions slow us down, and slowing down can feel dangerous when fear is in control. The tension between fear and compassion is one of the most difficult internal conflicts humans experience. Fear wants distance, compassion wants closeness. Fear sees risk, compassion sees humanity. Neither emotion is wrong. Fear keeps us alive, while compassion connects us to others. The problem arises when fear completely silences compassion, reducing a person in need to a threat simply because they are unfamiliar. When someone encounters a distressed stranger, fear often creates assumptions. The mind begins filling gaps with worst-case scenarios. This is not cruelty, it is survival instinct. The brain is trained to predict danger when information is incomplete. However, these predictions are based on imagination, not evidence. Compassion challenges those assumptions by asking us to observe rather than immediately judge. Compassion does not mean ignoring fear. True compassion exists alongside fear, not instead of it. It acknowledges risk while still choosing humanity. This balance is difficult because society often teaches extremes. Either protect yourself at all costs or be selflessly kind without limits. Real-life situations rarely allow such clear choices. Instead, they require careful emotional control, recognizing fear without letting it dictate every action. One reason fear often wins is because it feels justified. Fear can be explained easily. I didn't know them. I didn't feel safe. Compassion, however, requires emotional effort. It requires vulnerability, the willingness to be affected by someone else's pain. Vulnerability is uncomfortable because it removes emotional armor. It opens the possibility of regret, responsibility, or emotional weight. Fear also has a louder voice. It speaks in urgency and intensity. Compassion speaks quietly. It whispers instead of shouts. In chaotic moments, louder emotions dominate. Choosing compassion requires conscious effort, pausing, breathing, observing. This pause can feel risky, but it is often the moment where humanity enters the situation. Another challenge is that fear often disguises itself as logic. People tell themselves they are being rational when they are actually reacting emotionally. Compassion, meanwhile, is dismissed as weakness or naivety. But compassion is not the absence of boundaries. It does not mean surrendering safety. It means responding with awareness rather than reflex. Fear narrows vision. Compassion widens it. When fear dominates, you see only yourself and the potential danger. When compassion enters, you begin to see the full picture. The exhaustion in someone's posture, the hesitation in their voice, the signs of distress that fear initially ignored. These details don't erase risk, but they provide context, and context changes decisions. The struggle between fear and compassion is also shaped by experience. People who have felt helpless or unsafe before may react more strongly with fear. Those who have received kindness in their own moments of vulnerability may find compassion easier to access. Neither reaction is a moral failure. Both are shaped by history. Understanding this helps explain why different people respond differently to the same situation. Choosing compassion does not require certainty. It requires courage, the courage to act without full information. It means accepting that you may not fully understand the situation, yet still choosing to treat the other person as human first, problem second. This choice does not eliminate fear, but it prevents fear from becoming cruelty. In the end, fear and compassion are both attempts at protection. Fear protects the body. Compassion protects the soul. When they collide, the decision made in that moment reveals values more than intentions. Not because one emotion is better than the other, but because the balance between them defines how we move through unpredictable human encounters. The word runaway carries weight long before any story is told. It arrives loaded with assumptions, images, and judgments that society has built over time. When people hear it, they often imagine rebellion, irresponsibility, or defiance. The term suggests someone who chose to leave simply because they wanted freedom or excitement. But this simplified image ignores the reality that most runaways are not running towards something. They are running away from something they can no longer survive. To understand who a runaway really is, we must first understand what pushes a person to leave everything familiar behind. Leaving home is not an easy decision. It means abandoning stability, routine, and safety, even when those things are imperfect. For many, the choice to run is not made in a moment of drama, but built slowly through fear, silence, and exhaustion. It is often the final step after every other option feels closed. Runaways are frequently people whose voices were ignored before they ever left. They may have asked for help in subtle ways, through changes in behavior, declining performance, or emotional withdrawal. When these signals go unnoticed or are punished instead of understood, escape begins to feel like the only form of control left. Running becomes less about rebellion and more about self-preservation. The stereotype of a runaway as reckless or manipulative hides the deeper truth. Most are unprepared and scared. They leave without plans, resources, or protection. The outside world is far more dangerous than the environment they fled, but in their mind, the danger is at least unfamiliar rather than constant. This tells us something important. Whatever they were facing before felt worse than uncertainty. Many runaways are carrying invisible wounds. These wounds may come from emotional neglect, harsh control, unrealistic expectations, or environments where love was conditional. Not all harm leaves physical marks. Psychological pressure, constant fear, or a lack of safety can be just as damaging. When home becomes a source of pain rather than comfort, the idea of leaving can feel like relief rather than loss. Another misconception is that runaways want to be rescued. In reality, many fear authority and adults because authority has previously failed or harmed them. This fear does not mean they reject help. It means they are cautious about who offers it. Trust, for them, is fragile. It has been broken before, and rebuilding it requires patience, not force. Understanding a runaway also means understanding age and power. Young people often lack the language to explain what they are experiencing. They may not fully understand that their situation is unhealthy, they only know it hurts. Without the tools to advocate for themselves, running away becomes a form of communication, a desperate message saying, "I cannot stay." Society often asks, why didn't they just ask for help, without realizing how unsafe asking can feel. When previous attempts to speak up were dismissed, mocked, or punished, silence becomes protection. Leaving quietly feels safer than staying and being unheard. This does not excuse risky decisions, but it explains them. Runaways are also shaped by survival instincts. Once they leave, they must adapt quickly. They learn to hide, to observe, to minimize attention. These behaviors can be misinterpreted as deceitful or suspicious, when in reality they are survival responses. Hyperawareness, guarded speech, and hesitation are signs of fear, not guilt. The label runaway reduces a complex human experience into a single word. It strips away context and replaces it with judgment. When we use that label without curiosity, we stop seeing the person behind it. We stop asking what failed them before they ever left. To truly understand who a runaway is, we must shift the question from "why did they leave?" to "what made staying impossible?" That question changes everything. It turns blame into inquiry and judgment into understanding. It reminds us that behind every runaway story is a person who reached a breaking point and chose movement over collapse. In the end, moments like these are not really about strangers or fear or even crisis. They are about choice. When the unexpected disrupts our lives, we are forced to decide, often in seconds, what kind of people we are going to be. Not in theory, not in speeches, but in real life, when no one is watching and there is no time to prepare. That night was never about fixing someone else's life. It was about recognizing that behind every label is a human being, and behind every moment of fear is a story waiting to be heard. Compassion did not erase risk, and listening did not solve everything, but they created something just as important: safety, dignity, and trust. That we like to believe that courage looks dramatic. But sometimes courage is quiet. Sometimes it is choosing not to panic, choosing not to judge, choosing to listen when fear tells us to turn away. Those choices may seem small, but in the life of someone who is running out of places to feel safe, they can mean everything. Because long after the shock fades and the doors close, what remains is not the memory of fear, but the knowledge that in an unexpected moment, humanity showed up.